to pass our heritage on to future generations. Busan invites you. The 48th session of UNESCO World Heritage Committee. July 2026, Busan, Korea.
We change today, inspiring daily life. We create tomorrow, inspired by innovation. Change today, create tomorrow. Lotte.
Good evening. It's 11 p.m. December 31st, New Year's Eve here in South Korea. As people around the world prepare to say goodbye to 2025 and welcome in the new year. And with less than an hour away from entering 2026, people here in South Korea are waiting for a new chapter with hope and excitement, including those at Poshingak Pavilion in Central Seoul, home to the country's landmark bell ringing ceremony. We go live to the site with our Park Go-nu standing by. Junan, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's Eve, Tommy.
Junan, you've been out there all day, and you would know it's one freezing New Year's Eve. But I'm sure air is alive with joy and excitement for what the new year will bring, especially since it's nearly midnight, right?
Right, Tommy. As you just mentioned, I'm currently at Poshingak Pavilion, and we're heading to the final hour of 2025 in less than an hour. The bell will ring at midnight, which means in less than an hour, the 2026, the year of a red horse will start. And although the temperature outside is freezing cold, many people have gathered here to enjoy the arrival of the new year. Unlike last year when the country was observing a national mourning period following a deadly airplane crash that claimed more than 100 lives, this year's atmosphere feels vibrant and full of energy. Let's take a listen to what attendees currently waiting for the ceremony have to say about it.
I have been through a lot, so I hope next year I can get back on my feet and really make a leap forward. I would like to run strongly ahead like a horse.
I wish I can become taller, and I hope my family stays healthy.
Across the city, major venues including Dongdaemun Design Plaza, Lotte World Tower, and Haneul Park are set to attract a combined total of up to 220,000 people.
I see. Junan, if I'm not wrong, at least 100,000 people are there for the country's traditional bell ringing ceremony. Tell us more about the ceremony at the Bosinggak Pavilion there, and what should people out there and our viewers look forward to tonight?
That's right, Tami. So here in Daeshinggak, the parade performance started just at 11 p.m. as you can just hear. And so there are so many people actually coming, and the event will feature a series of performances to create a festive atmosphere, followed by the introduction of the bell ringers, honor guests representing various sectors of society, including community leaders for cultural figures. Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon will also deliver a year-end address reflecting on 2025. At the main event at midnight, the pavilion will be covered by 3 themed LED displays. The bell ringers will toll the bell 33 times in 3 sets of 11 strikes each. And after the bell ringing ceremony, local band Crying Nut will perform 3 songs as a celebrity live performance.
Well, Junan, I do have to mention while those events are ongoing, as always, safety is a #1 priority. What steps have been put in place to ensure public safety in Central Tower?
Right, Tami. Public safety is the always important thing. And to ensure safety, the police have deployed over 3,000 officers citywide with about over 1,700 people focused on high traffic areas, such as here, Bosinggak Pavilion. Also, the event zone here is divided into 12 control sections to manage the crowd. Not to mention, traffic restrictions are already in effect. Starting 6 p.m. tonight through and lasting until 7 a.m. tomorrow, roads around Chonglo, Ujeongguk Road, and the north side of Cheonggyecheon Road will be closed with 400 traffic officers and 10 police motorcycles in patrol. I'll be back as the bell ringing really nears, live from Bosinggak Pavilion.
Now, as we count down to 2026, let's take a moment to look back at 2025 through some of the keywords that define the year. We have our Eunji in the studio to walk us through them. Eunji, let us start off with Google's top trending searches this year.
Sure, Tommy. So Google has unveiled its list of searches that shaped this year. Year in Search 2025 in Korea shows that the presidential election, K-pop Demon Hunters, and ChatGPT topped the list. Now, they're not the most searched terms, but instead, Google says the list highlights terms that saw the highest spike in traffic over a sustained period in 2025 compared to 2024. So basically, it gives us an idea of which terms newly captured public interest over the past year. Now, as more users sought to better understand political and social trends, the 2025 presidential election ranked first among the trending search terms in the news category. In the film category, K-content performed well, with Netflix animated hit K-pop Demon Hunters taking the top spot, followed by director Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17 and Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice. In the music category, this year's K-pop hits, Golden and Soda Pop, ranked high in search results. And of course, interest in AI and future technologies was another key indicator of this year's tech trends. ChatGPT ranked first, followed by a range of AI models like Gemini, Zeta, and Perplexity, all of which made the top 10. And what's also notable is that K-pop Demon Hunters ranked second among trending searches in the United States. Other top trending searches included Charlie Kirk, Labubu, and iPhone 17, and the Trump administration's One Big Beautiful Act.
I see. Now, on top of that, prominent dictionaries also pick a word of the year every year that captures the whole vibe of the whole year. Anji, what do you have for us?
That's right. Merriam-Webster announced this year's word is slop, reflecting the surge in fake online content across social media apps, video platforms, and group chats. The term originally referred to watery food waste or mud, but it's now taken on a new meaning in the digital age. The dictionary's editor said they define slop as digital content of low quality that's produced usually in quantity by means of artificial intelligence. Said interest in the word surged as people searched for a way to describe the increasing volume of online material that appears polished on the surface but offers little substance. And the Oxford Word of the Year for this year also has something to do with online content. It chose the phrase rage bait, defined as online content designed to provoke anger and boost engagement. In the labor market, it wasn't an easy year for many workers. According to the global online career platform Glassdoor, one word that summarized the mood of the workforce this year was fatigue. The company said the term fatigue saw a 40% spike in mentions across its community, and that this year workers spent a lot of time on edge, worried about technology shift and potential economic shocks.
It was indeed a tough year for workers, and now similar to the word of the year here in Korea, Eunji, professors choose a 4-character phrase each year, right?
That's right, and this year 766 professors across the country chose the phrase 변동불가 as the 4-character idiom that sums up how things changed in Korean society this year. Now, the phrase means the world never stays still and is constantly moving and changing. So it reflects the whirlwind of political turmoil the country went through after the December 3rd martial law and the impeachment of former President Yoon Suk-yeol. Those surveys said a year filled with a chapter of Korea's turbulent modern history is now drawing to a close. And said despite the political chaos, we were once again able to see the global impact of Korean culture through films such as K-pop Demon Hunters.
Well, there you have it, the keywords that sum up 2025. It's been quite a year. Eunji, thanks for the wrap-up. We appreciate it. President Lee Jae-myung is set to take the oath of office during the inauguration ceremony at the National Assembly.
엄숙히 선서합니다.
Prosecutors are seeking a 10-year sentence for former President Yoon Suk-yeol on charges of obstructing the execution of a warrant to arrest him.
President Lee Jae-myung began working from the presidential office at Cheongwade today following the relocation of the office from Yongsan.
This year's APEC leaders meeting, chaired by President Lee Jae-myung, wrapped up in Gyeongju with the adoption of the APEC leaders' Gyeongju Declaration.
After the second summit between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump, in just 2 months, a trade deal has been announced.
South Korea's benchmark Kospi surpassed the 4,000 mark for the first time.
It was the 4,000 mark, which is entering a new range.
Netflix sensation K-pop Demon Hunters has become the most watched title on the platform.
The 4th Nudie space rocket heading to space yet again. The Nudie SLV is soaring up into the sky with a strong roar and such powerful flames. Looking back at 2025, it was another eventful year in South Korea. Politics in particular dominated the headlines, beginning with the impeachment of then-President Yoon Suk-yeol, and followed by a snap presidential election that ushered in the Lee Jae-myung administration. To walk us through how the year unfolded, our top office correspondent Song Yujin is joining us. Yujin, good to see you.
Great to be here, Tommy.
So Yujin, around this time last year, former President Yoon Suk-yeol was suspended from exercising his presidential powers following an impeachment motion. Remind us, what came next?
Right, so what followed were months of deliberations at the Constitutional Court. Then finally on April 4th, the court delivered its final ruling.
By mobilizing the military and police to undermine the authority of constitutional institutions, including the National Assembly, and by infringing upon the fundamental rights of the people, the respondent failed in his duty to safeguard the Constitution and gravely betrayed the trust placed in him by the people of the Republic of Korea, the sovereign of this democratic republic. President Yoon Suk-yeol is hereby removed from office.
So all 8 justices unanimously upheld Yoon's impeachment.
So once the court made its decision, we all knew the clock was ticking. What happened next?
Right, so under South Korean law, a snap presidential election must take place within 60 days of an impeachment ruling. So to talk about the presidential election, the race ultimately came down to 2 candidates, the Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung and the People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo. So after a 3-week campaign period, voters headed to the polls on June 3rd. Lee won the election with 49.42% of the vote, a margin of more than 8 percentage points. Now, because it was a snap election, his term began immediately without a transition committee in the early hours of June 4th. A scaled-down inauguration ceremony was held later in the morning at the National Assembly.
대한민국 주권자의 충직한 일꾼으로서 5,200만 국민의 삶과 국가의 미래를 위탁받은 대리인으로서 제21대 대통령에게 주어진 책임을 충실하게 이행하겠습니다.
So let's turn to the administration's first 6 months. You've been following him for the past, 6 months, right? Now, what would you say has defined the initial phase?
Well, I would say that the first 6 months of the Lee administration, the key word would be recovery, which is basically stabilizing the country after months of political turmoil. So domestically, the top priority has been the economy. Inflation pressures and political uncertainty had weighed heavily on growth. So that's why President Lee's first executive order created an emergency economic task force. And that was also followed by a supplementary budget featuring voucher-style cash handouts to boost domestic consumption.
The economic growth rate rebounded sharply from minus 0.2% in the first quarter of this year to 1.3% in the third quarter, the highest level since the fourth quarter of 2021.
And the markets responded as well. So amendments to the Commercial Act in South Korea strengthened protections for minority shareholders and increased transparency in financial markets. So investor confidence surged, pushing the benchmark Kospi index above the 4,000 mark for the first time. Now the administration's longer goal is to usher in what it describes as the Kospi 5,000 era within President Lee's 5-year term.
Right. Now, Eugene, beyond short-term recovery, the administration has talking a lot about sustainable growth. What is the focus there?
Right, so there are a lot of future growth engines that the Lee administration has selected, but I would say that at the center of it is artificial intelligence. President Lee himself has repeatedly emphasized that artificial intelligence is essential not only to economic competitiveness, but also to national security. So far this year, he's met with leaders of global AI giants, including BlackRock, OpenAI, NVIDIA, and SoftBank. And his AI diplomacy led NVIDIA to make a high-profile commitment to supply 260,000 GPUs to South Korea.
The United States and China are far ahead. And after that, there's a race for third place. With NVIDIA's GPU pledge, we can secure a position among the top 3.
And to support this push, the government has earmarked a record high budget of 10.1 trillion won, roughly $6.87 billion for AI in the coming fiscal year.
Well, I do have to say the administration has also moved on several politically sensitive fronts. Tell us more, Eugene.
Right. So one of President Lee's key campaign pledges was prosecution reform. As you know, as prosecutors in South Korea have faced consistent criticism for wielding excessive power and for being susceptible to political influence.
그래서 검찰 제도를 개편하는 문제는 정말로 중요한 일이에요. 특히 이제 한 국가 공동체의 질서를 유지하는 최종 기구거든요. 죄진 사람은 오히려 보호해가지고 억울한 피해자를 깜빵 보내고 나쁜 사람한테 돈 뜯게 해주고 이거 진짜 많아요.
By amending the Government Organization Act, the prosecutor's office will be dismantled and replaced by 2 new agencies, one overseeing investigations under the Interior Ministry and another handling indictments under the Justice Ministry. Now, following a 1-year grace period, the new agencies are set to launch in October 2026. President Lee also appointed special prosecutors to investigate allegations tied to the former administration, including former President Yoon's martial law declaration and accusations of bribery and election interference involving former First Lady Kim Gun-hee.
Right. Now, that's not it. Another defining feature, I do have to say, seems to be the administration's openness, right?
That's another defining feature as well. That's a key point because President Lee has broken precedent, and he has made the decision to broadcast cabinet meetings live, not only his opening remarks, but also the ministers' discussions as well. He's also live streamed ministry briefings, the policy briefings, and continued nationwide town hall meetings, traveling to regions to hear directly from residents about local concerns.
Town hall meetings will continue next year. Our administration also held its first presidential press conference in the shortest time on record, just 30 days after the inauguration. On average, there were about 2 press briefings a day, nearly double the number under previous administrations.
So all in all, transparency and communication have become central pillars of the administration, especially in contrast to criticism that the previous Yoon Suk-yeol administration was closed door.
Now, Eugene, this is a pretty latest development. Moving back to Cheongwade, the Blue House. Tell us more about the movement.
So after more than 3.5 years in Yongsan, the presidential office has finally returned to its former home, which is Cheongwade, also known as the Blue House. So the Yoon Suk-yeol administration relocated the presidential office to the Defense Ministry compound in 2022, saying that the Blue House symbolized an overly centralized imperial presidency distant from the public. However, President Lee has argued that Cheongwade is better equipped with established security, protocol, and diplomatic infrastructure, making it more cost-efficient and operationally effective.
Right. It's been just half a year into the new administration, Eugene. Now, looking ahead to next year, President Lee's first full year in office, what should we be watching?
Well, I would say that a lot is coming up this year because President Lee has signaled that 2026 will be a year of big structural change. So he's outlined 6 major areas for reform during his weekly meeting with his top aides, which were regulation, finance, the public sector, pensions, education, and labor. So while the first half year has been about stabilizing the country, the next phase will likely define how ambitious this presidency ultimately becomes.
Indeed, a pivotal year marking the start of a new administration. Eugene, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. And following South Korea's political reset, President Lee Jae-myung spent the last 6 months rolling out his summit diplomacy. Here's our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min with details.
Following 2 rounds of South Korea-U.S. summit talks, President Lee Jae-myung concluded trade negotiations with his American counterpart, Donald Trump.
대미 투자 확대를 통해서 또 대미 구매 확대를 통해서 미국의 제조 부흥을 지원하고 조선 협력도 적극적으로 해 나가도록 하겠습니다.
And you're working with us now on shipbuilding because you become a master of shipbuilding.
But this was not all.
핵 추진 잠수함의 연료를 우리가 공급받을 수 있도록 대통령께서 결단을 좀 해주시면 좋겠습니다.
The joint fact sheet was made public, but with the bilateral nuclear energy agreement banning South Korea from enriching uranium, Seoul is seeking an exemption, similar to Australia's case. On top of that, President Lee's pragmatic diplomacy was largely front and center, having resumed the so-called Seoul-Tokyo shuttle diplomacy and restored Seoul-Beijing ties. When asked about the recent diplomatic conflict between China and Japan,
대한민국 속담에 싸움은 말리고 흥정은 붙이라고 하는 말이 있습니다. 최대한 공존하고 존중하고 협력하는 것이 바람직합니다.
His focus was also on multilateral summit diplomacy. In November, the APEC leaders meeting in South Korea concluded with the Gyeongju Declaration.
개방적이고 역동적이며 평화로운 아태 공동체를 향한 APEC의 중장기 미래 청사진, 아태 지역의 회복과 성장을 위한 회원 간 협력의 의지도 포함시켰습니다.
In September, President Lee laid out his vision on North Korea at the UN General Assembly to revive inter-Korean dialogue, with a focus on exchange, normalization, and denuclearization, dubbed the E&D Initiative. Since making his debut on the multilateral summit diplomacy at the G7 summit in June, the South Korean leader focused on expanding diplomatic horizons to the global south at the G20 summit, while laying out the Shine Initiative in the Middle East. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And now, the return to political stability here in the country didn't happen overnight. It's been over a year since former President Yoon Suk-yeol's botched martial law order was declared. We take a step back to reflect on what happened a year ago and where South Korea's democracy stands now.
1 year after a declaration of martial law shook the nation, we look back on the night that tested the country's democratic foundations. So Sang-jin, let's do a brief recap of what happened first. Walk us through the night of December 3rd, 2024.
Right, Hae-ryun. So former President Yoon Suk-yeol declared a martial law at 10:29 p.m. to eradicate what he called anti-state forces. So more than 200 armed troops entered the National Assembly grounds by helicopter and ground vehicles, leading to physical confrontations with staff and aides. Shortly after 1 a.m., all 190 lawmakers who had managed to get to the Assembly out of the 300-member total voted in favor of a motion to lift martial law. Following the vote, the troops began withdrawing from the National Assembly. Former President Yoon then approved the motion to lift martial law in a cabinet meeting and publicly announced the end shortly before 6 a.m. on December 4th. Now, during those 8 hours after martial law was declared until it was lifted, we saw a glimpse of a powerful movement reviving South Koreans' resistance and fight for democracy. The inscription on the gates of the National Assembly describes it as the last bastion of democracy. And through the events of December 3rd, we saw how this mere symbolic figure was translated into a literal front line, how the Assembly became a defensive stronghold for the nation's democratic values. Today, after a year has passed since the event, we see areas that truly acted as a landmark of democratic resilience. The perimeter fences that lawmakers climbed over to evade police patrols and convene a plenary session. A hall where martial law forces shattered the building's windows to gain entry, causing an intense confrontation. And the main plenary chamber where the voting took place to lift the martial law decree. Now, those moments were revived this year through several events, but there weren't just solid installations, weren't there, Hae-ryung?
That's right, Sang-jin. So a major event of the day was the media facade projection on the outer walls of the Assembly, which recounted the timeline of the crisis and its aftermath, combining videos shot from a year ago with performances and music to commemorate the occasion. The 20-minute show offered a reflection on the events that took place a year before and all that followed, drawing crowds well into the night. One aspect of the media facade that particularly stood out to me was that there were so many clips of citizens who were part of the program. It was clear that the event was centered around highlighting the role of the people and not just lawmakers. A series of guided dark tours was also launched on in the day, offering the public a first-hand look at key locations tied to the events of last year. National Assembly Speaker Won-sik led the inaugural tour himself on the first day, and he shared a little tidbit regarding the fence that you also visited, Sang-jin. So he recalled the situation at the time, saying that the walls surrounding the National Assembly were completely straight without a foothold, and he had no choice but to climb over this fence in his urgency to get inside and lift the martial law decree. So apart from Udo, obviously other lawmakers who were there also play a big role in these events. And looking back, how do you think they account for the event, and how do they feel now after a year has passed?
Well, first of all, on December 3rd this year, we saw 25 lawmakers from the PPP issuing an official apology at a press conference. Now, they intended to express deep responsibility as members of the ruling party at the time, and the group pledged to severe ties with the former president and vowed to pursue sweeping internal reforms.
We are here to reflect on our errors and apologize to the public for everything from the illegal martial law decree to the subsequent impeachment of the president.
On the other hand, for the DP, which led the lifting of the martial law decree a year ago, they sought to cement the event's place in history, with the floor leader characterizing the night as a revolution of light.
We have driven out the forces of darkness and emerged victorious. History may not always move in a straight line, but it will never retreat.
The DP introduced legislation to officially designate December 3rd as a National Pro-Democracy Memorial Day. And through a special address that day, President Lee Jae-myung also expressed his intent to designate December 3rd as a National Sovereignty Day and establish it as a legal public holiday. Now, what's interesting to see, Hae-ryung, though, is that to see that with the same series of events, the memories and reflections with all these people are actually so various. But as you mentioned before, commemorating this day in history was centered around the people that were actually there and present a year ago and on its anniversary, right?
That's right, Sang-jin. So 1 year on, the memory of the martial law is no longer confined to the walls of the National Assembly. It lives on in the everyday lives of citizens, those who showed up, stayed, and continue to speak out. For some, resistance became routine.
When we hold a sit-in here, except for weekends, we basically live here, eating and sleeping in a tent as we continue our protest. To be honest, I'm human too. I was scared and terrified, but as I sat there thinking, I realized this wasn't a moment to run. This was a moment to step out.
And this year, people took to the streets again. I still remember how bitterly cold it was on December 3rd this year, but people filled the streets despite below freezing temperatures. Music, speeches, and banners recalling last year's nationwide protests set a charged, energetic tone.
It feels like time has flown by. Some issues have been resolved, while others remain, but as a citizen, I will continue to work hard to address even those that haven't been resolved.
The weather suddenly got so cold, but I came out here with the hopes of ending the insurrection soon.
Now, as National Assembly correspondents who also got to witness the beginning till the end of the martial law, we have shown a glimpse of how the National Assembly became a physical battleground and is now a place where the nation's democratic values were defended through resistance. It was a pleasure to talk about it with you, Arirang.
I'm looking forward to spending another year at the National Assembly with you, Sang-jin.
I think it goes without saying that the resilience of the Korean people and the desire for democracy has been probably the strongest thing that I have noticed over the past year since the martial law crisis. Of course, Koreans want accountability for the actions of their leaders, and I think by them impeaching the president and then having a new election, I think that was probably the biggest highlight of the year.
Well, in the past year, I would definitely say it was quite impressive how South Korea maintained stability after the turmoil caused by martial law at the end of last year. It was very important for the country to show to the world that they were a strong democracy.
I think what was the most impressive thing that happened in the last year is the strength and the force of the K-democracy. That was the word that were used by President Lee Jae-myung, but it's true that Korean people and citizens have shown that they truly care for their democracy and that they are there to protect it and to show that it has to keep going and it has to keep getting stronger.
It certainly has made this year more interesting politically, you could say. And in one respect, and this has been something covered much in the foreign media, it is, you could say, a victory of Korea's democracy or democratic institutions that this push for martial law was overruled and the president taken out of office. You know, I think the world was almost charmed by the sort of the movement in support of democracy, the humor of it. A lot of the young people that came out to call for impeachment, you know, they really took the global stage with a sort of a sense of humor, a bit of fun, and almost had like a K-pop vibe to it. I think that was really striking to me.
Honestly, I think, without sounding too cliche, I think the popularity of Korean culture abroad is something that has stood out to me the most. Even when I go back to the UK, I am stunned at how popular Korean culture is and how it is now basically all over the place, be it K-food, K-beauty, or K-pop.
What I see is there's some hopes, and if you talk to your average people every day in the street, still there's some political difficulties. But people want to have a better life, people want to work together, people want to make Korea a better place, and I think this hope will thrive on and will make Korea a better place.
And 2025 was a roller coaster year for the economy. We started with trade wars and ended with the Kospi shattering the 4,000-point ceiling. And to get us through ups and downs, our Kim Do-yeon joins us to break down key numbers and events. Do-yeon, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Dami. That's right. Before we get going, I have a quiz for you. Take a look at this and guess what he's talking about.
You've heard me say, I say it kiddingly, but it's one of the most beautiful words in the dictionary. It really is.
Well, Do-yeon, that has to be tariffs, right?
That's right, it's tariffs. Now, let's take a look at this timeline. Upon President Donald Trump's inauguration in January, the whole world responded with negotiations to avoid tariffs for exports to the U.S. Now, keep in mind, South Korea's then president was suspended with the top office run by people in acting roles, meaning less power to negotiate. The reality came in April when the U.S. announced reciprocal tariffs on Liberation Day. For each nation, there were new tariff rates of up to 50% that were to kick in just months later. South Korea's tariff rate, as we all know, was set at 25%, but the tide turned in June with the inauguration of President Lee in June. The new administration immediately kicked off a series of negotiations, ultimately reaching a verbal agreement in July on a massive package, $450 billion in investment to the U.S. That included $300 billion in direct U.S. investment and, crucially, $150 billion for the MASCA, or Make American Shipbuilding Great Again project. In exchange, Seoul secured a tariff cap of just 15%. The framework was officially signed by President Lee and President Trump at the October APEC summit, effectively ending the tariff scare of 2025.
It was a dramatic series of events for South Korea, especially with its competitors in the U.S. market securing better tariff rates earlier. Now, Doyan, as you said, things are relatively good. Record shattered here and there, isn't that right?
That is absolutely right. Let's take a look at the numbers through graphs. I want to start with exports because this will lead to the benchmark Kospi breaking the 4,000 mark. The nation, of course, started 2025 on shaky ground as exports plunged to $49 billion, down 10% on year. And as you can see here in May, before the new administration came to power, and amid the tariff scare, exports fell on year again. But the turnaround was dramatic. For 6 months until November, each month recorded the highest export for that month, including in September, when it rose 13% on year. With this pace and a strong finish in December, South Korea's annual exports will likely surpass $700 billion for 1 year for the first time ever. The driver of this was undoubtedly semiconductors. With the rise in AI industries, more chips were needed. Because of this, South Korea hit an all-time high of $17.27 billion in November just for chips. It wasn't just the volume, it was also the value because of the demand. You can see here DRAM and NAND prices going up along with chip export numbers. Also, just a reminder, when the heads of Samsung and Hyundai met with NVIDIA founder and CEO Jensen Huang for the so-called CHIMAC meeting in Gangnam, it signaled to the world that Korea was one of the biggest hubs of the AI supply chain. Now, that reflected in the market as well, but it was President Lee Jae-myung's goal to boost the market from the beginning, making his visit to the Korea Exchange his very first outing since inauguration.
대한민국 주식시장은 여러분들 아시는 것처럼 너무 불공정하고 불투명하고 다른 나라 사람들이 보면 저 시장을 어떻게 믿냐 이렇게 생각될 정도.
Take a look at this graph. It goes up after June, with the vacancy now filled in the top office as well as the rise in chip demand. Considering where the market started early this year, it is a very big rise, going into the 4,000 range for the very first time. This elevation, however, was largely due to two companies, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. Now, all this stabilization in the government actually led to overall growth. In the first quarter, amidst political uncertainty, South Korea's GDP actually contracted by 0.2% as consumption froze. But the turnaround came in the third quarter. The government's decision to issue livelihood recovery coupons was the spark. The injection of liquidity revitalized local spending, pulling our growth rate up to 1.2% in the third quarter and sustaining a solid 0.8% in the fourth.
I see. Now, the year is ending on a high note for these indicators, but I'm afraid to say there are still obstacles lying ahead for the nation in the new year, right?
That's right. The biggest concern right now is the currency exchange. Despite our record exports, the $1 exchange rate has remained stubbornly high. South Korea started the year in the 45-55 won range. We saw a brief moment of relief in June when it dipped to around 1361 during a period of trade deal-related optimism. But as you can see, we're ending the year right back near the highs, with $1 trading in the 1470 to 1481 range. There are many reasons for this, but ultimately the won has been weakened, with more people betting on the dollar getting stronger. So the government has already announced measures to address the issue, and it's something it will continue to tackle going into next year.
Indeed, Doyan, thanks for that comprehensive coverage. Appreciate it, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
AI has become the defining force of 2025, reshaping industries, economies, and geopolitics at an unprecedented pace. And as global powers like the U.S. and China double down on their AI ambitions, South Korea is carving out its own path with bold investments and national goals. To explore where Korea stands now and where it's headed, here is our Within the Frame host, Kim Mo-gyan.
As AI breakthroughs pick up speed and the global race to lead is heating up, every country is working to define its own edge. So today, we connect to Toby Walsh, one of the world's leading AI experts, for his insights on where South Korea stands in this fast-moving landscape. So, Professor Walsh, let's start with the biggest picture first. So, how would you describe the current state of the global AI race, especially, with the pace of investment and innovation we've been seeing over the past year?
Well, I've been working in the field now for 40 years, and I have to say it's the most exciting time to be working in artificial intelligence. We're making real progress. What surprises me is not the technology. The technology is perhaps where I might have imagined it was when I started 40 years ago. But what has surprised me is the speed and scale at which we're investing in the technology. It's over $1 billion a day. That's more than a quarter of the world's R&D budget being spent on one technology. We've never seen such a concentration of resources being thrown at one technology before, which is why it seems to be arriving at such velocity, because it is arriving at such velocity.
Right, and that pace is staggering, both in terms of a technological advancement and global response as well. But within that global race, Professor Walsh, which is largely led by the United States and China, where do you think South Korea's position is right now? And what do you think is the biggest strengths in this place?
Well, I think Korea has a number of unique strengths that they can play to that will allow them to have perhaps an unfair advantage compared to some other nations. It's a very educated workforce that you have there. You make significant investments in R&D. You've shown in the past, whether it be semiconductors or cars, that you can compete on the international stage, and there's no reason why you couldn't do that.
So with this potential, then what needs to happen next, Professor? What do you think South Korea should do to actually become a true global leader in the AI field over the next 5 years?
Well, I guess one of the things I love about Korea is that you always set yourself bold ambitions. I'm not sure that you'll succeed, but in trying, you will make great progress and you will contribute to the Korean economy in huge ways. So I encourage the ambition. I welcome the ambition. And there's a couple of things that you have to invest in. I mean, first of all, there's just the digital infrastructure. I mean, we used to have to build roads and railways. Nowadays, we need to have to build the digital infrastructure. There's the data centers, the vast investments that are being made these days in data centers, the pipes, the satellite links, the undersea cables, and then the last mile, the fiber optics, increasingly these days that connect us, and the 4G, 5G, and 6G networks that we connect into all of this bandwidth with. So that's just table stakes. Just to be able to play, you've got to have that digital infrastructure. The other two things that are incredibly important, and Korea has some natural advantages in these two spaces. The first is human capital. is to have an educated and AI literate workforce, so that they can build this technology, that can understand its capabilities, understand its limitations. Having a nationwide AI literacy program that covers everyone from cradle to grave, from kindergarten to aged care. You want an AI literate population, not just a workforce, but a population. And then the third thing that you have to invest in, and it's incredibly important, and has always driven the AI revolution, is data. Again, Korea will have some unique data assets, Korean health records, for example, Korean education records. There's some wonderful data sets that you should be trying to leverage. And one place, of course, to do that well is government. People always forget that one of the businesses that has most to benefit from artificial intelligence is government. It's a third of GDP. $1 in $3 that you spend is the dollars that the government is spending. They're the biggest business in town. They're bigger than any other business. They've got more data than everyone else. They know everything about us from birth to death, they can use AI to more effectively, more efficiently deliver services to their public. So they have an almost unbounded mission that they can try and make better with artificial intelligence. So one of the best places to ensure that you become an AI first nation is within your government.
Right, so with the right groundwork in place, Korea has a real chance to lead, and it'll be interesting to see how things would unfold moving forward. Professor Walsh, thank you so much for your insights today.
Been a pleasure.
2025 was a defining year in South Korea's journey to the stars, characterized by the successful fourth launch of the homegrown Nuri rocket and a decisive shift toward a private sector-led new space era, marking a step closer to the country's goal of establishing itself as a space powerhouse. We connect with our AI anchor Arirang for the details.
On November 27, 2025, South Korea successfully launched its fourth homegrown space rocket, the Nuri, which lifted off from Gyeonggi County in Jeollanam province in the country's southwest at 1:13 a.m. This was the first nighttime launch offering the best conditions for the satellite to observe natural light displays or auroras. It carried 12 CUBE satellites up from the 7 carried in the previous launch 2.5 years ago. The mission's success was confirmed 90 minutes into the launch when the main satellite reached an orbit of 601.3 kilometers, which was well within the 600-kilometer target and 6% error range. Also marking the success of the launch was that all 13 satellites, the main and its 12 CUBE satellites, established communication with ground stations. A significant element of this fourth Nuri launch is that it was led entirely by a private company. In July, the Nuri rocket technology was transferred to Hanwha Aerospace, a private company. Hanwha was selected after evaluations by experts, as the Korea Aerospace Administration sealed a deal to transfer core space technology from the government-led space launch program. The previous 3 launches were carried out by KASA in 2023, 2021, and 2022. Between when the project was handed to Hanwha in July and the actual launch in November, the wet dress rehearsal, which is a critical pre-launch test for rockets, was completed in early September. This test also checked whether the launch vehicle could withstand extreme cryogenic temperatures. With the achievement this year, excitement is already building for future Nuri missions to come. The next launches of South Korea's Nuri rocket are planned for 2026, which would be the 5th, and the 6th in 2027. And as Hanwha Aerospace focuses on rocket development, the Korea Aerospace Research Institute will develop a lunar lander. South Korea already has an orbiter called Nuri, launched 3 years ago, and is set to continue its mission until 2027. But its lunar exploration lander would have to be 3 times heavier than Nuri, requiring additional fuel to overcome the moon's gravity and for a soft landing. Now, if this lunar project is successful, South Korea would become the 6th country in the world to achieve a lunar landing. And that's it from me on the coverage of the 2025 Nuri satellite launch.
From the return of legendary K-pop idols to artists setting new global records, including newcomers in the K-pop scene and noteworthy productions on a screen and a stage. And we look back at the top entertainment issues of 2025 with our Bella. Hello, Bella.
Hi, nice to see you.
And also joining us is our Walter. Welcome, Walter.
It's lovely to be here, Dami.
Walter, why don't we start with our beloved BTS?
Yes, indeed. So it's no surprise that the level of attention that the boys got this year was huge. BTS's biggest achievement in 2025 was the milestone of completing their military service and fully reuniting as a group with every member now out. The year marked the foundation for BTS to resume activities as a complete group for the first time in nearly 3 years.
Right, but I do have to mention there have been numerous issues surrounding the group's agency, Hive, Bella, but it seems like the focus came down to BTS's return, right, as a whole group.
That is correct. Among several issues related to BTS, their SNS live broadcast grabbed most attention with over 73 million viewers, reaffirming the group's strong connection with their fans' armies. The members' solo activities continued to maintain global influence with multiple entries making onto the Billboard charts and also year-end rankings.
Well, moving on to solo female artists who have delivered outstanding performances this year. Why don't we start with Rose?
We could easily call 2025 the year of milestone for Rose. She made history as a K-pop female solo artist by reaching #1 on the Billboard Global chart and also making onto the year-end top 10 for Hot 100. She was also nominated for major Grammy categories and also won an MTV VMA, earning recognitions for both her musicality and mass appeal. Going beyond music scene, Rose proved her global influence with her YouTube content, surpassing billion views, and many critics even noted that her musical identity became even more distinctive than ever.
Now, another standout was the remarkable success of her fellow member, Jennie. Walter, fill us in here.
Yes, among female artists, Jennie is another name you can't leave out of the conversation, continuing to hold an unrivaled position across music, performance, and also fashion. She keeps raising the bar for K-pop female soloists this year. Many wanted to be just like Jennie. In 2025, Jennie firmly cemented her status as a solo artist by entering the Billboard Hot 100 top 10 with her solo release and topping the global charts in more than 20 countries. She also proved her worldwide popularity in numbers, surpassing several billion cumulative views on YouTube and over 1 billion annual streams on Spotify.
Right. Now let's shift to some of the more recent idol generations, Bella, or rookies, I have to say.
Let's start with Stray Kids. Even though they're not a rookie group, I do want to mention them as they have set a great example for what a growing group looks like. This year was extra meaningful for Stray Kids as they made history by topping 8 albums in a row on the Billboard 200 main album chart, a very first in Billboard's 69-year history.
Then what about the rookie groups that recently burst onto the scene?
Good question, Nami. So there are teams like All Day Project and Cortez to watch. All Day Project set a record for the 5th generation groups when their debut single, Famous, topped Melon's Top 100 real-time chart just 3 days after its release, the fastest debut song for a 5th generation group. They also made it onto the Billboard Global 200 and surpassed 250,000 album sales. Now, Cortez is a 5-member boy group that debuted this year under Big Hit Music, marking the label's first new boy group in 6 years. They drew attention with their official track, What You Want, and their debut album, Color Outside the Lines, recorded 436,000 first week sales, the highest among rookies this year. Now, in addition, they won the Global Rookie Award at the TikTok Awards 2025, and their debut album entered the Billboard 200 as well as Melon and global charts demonstrating a powerful presence across multiple indicators as rookies.
Indeed, we have to, Bella, talk about films and stage performances. Now, a string of movies drew attention for their box office success, didn't they?
That's correct. There's No Other Choice, The King of Kings, and Maybe Happy Ending. These three works achieved both commercial success and also critical acclaim, leaving a significant mark on Korea's film and performing arts scene. The musical Maybe Happy Ending delivered a remarkable achievement with a Korean original musical earning 10 Tony Awards nominations on Broadway and winning 6 awards. It took home honors including Best Musical, Best Book, Best Original Score, Best Direction, Best Actor, and also Best Scenic Design, making it the most awarded production of this season. Now, No Other Choice earned recognition for its cinematic quality as it was invited to the Venice International Film Festival for their competition section, along with other major film festivals as well, including Toronto International Film Festival and also New York Film Festival. The film was also chosen as South Korea's official submission for the Best International Feature Film at the Academy Awards, securing its status as one of defining Korean films of 2025.
Then Bella, what kind of record did The King of Kings set?
A King of Kings, we have to talk about that film as well. The film recorded major box office success both domestically and also internationally. In Korea, it surpassed 1 million cumulative admissions in just about 19 days after its release, becoming the only animated film of 2025 to exceed the 1 million mark and ranking among the top performers at the box office, animation box office, that is. And as a result, the film is expected to draw even greater attention in 2026.
Well, as we head into the new year, we'll closely follow how far this momentum will continue in the world of K-entertainment. And you guys will be keeping us updated, right?
Definitely.
Yes,
All right, Bella, thanks for coming in tonight.
You're welcome.
And also, Walter, it was nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Dami.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
We are now less than 10 minutes away from the bell ringing ceremony that will officially usher in the new year at Boshingak Pavilion in Central Seoul. A moment tens of thousands of people have waited for all night. Let's go back to our Park Junan, who's standing by live at the scene. Welcome back, Junan.
Hello, Dami. Good to be back again.
So, Junan, I'm sure despite the chill or severe cold, rather, the crowds are absolutely buzzing with excitement as they gather to welcome the New Year 2026, right?
Right, Daimi. As I just mentioned, I'm currently at Boshingak Pavilion, and now it's just less than 10 minutes left until the midnight, which means in less than 10 minutes, we will welcome 2026, the Year of Red Horse. And behind me, Seoul Mayor Oh Se-yoon just finished his speech, and the bell ringers are currently taking pictures. And although the temperature outside is freezing cold, many people gathered here to enjoy the arrival of the new year. Unlike last year, when the country was observing a national mourning period following a deadly airplane crash that claimed more than 100 lives, this year's atmosphere feels vibrant and full of energy. Let's take a listen to what attendees currently waiting for the ceremony had to say about it.
I've been through a lot, so I hope next year I can get back on my feet and really make a leap forward. I would like to run strongly ahead like a horse.
I wish I can become taller, and I hope my family stays healthy.
Jongno District, where I am standing, is expected to draw up to 100,000 visitors for today's bell ringing ceremony. Across the city, major venues including Dongdaemun Design Plaza, Lotte Old Tower, and Hanul Park are set to attract a combined total of up to 220,000 people.
Now, the traditional bell ringing ceremony will come in a matter of minutes, in about 5 minutes. Juna, walk us through what kind of events we're about to see and experience at the Boshingak Pavilion tonight.
Of course, Tommy, here at Boshingak, the ceremony began at 11 with a lot of performances and speeches, and to create a festive atmosphere, followed by the introduction of bell ringers. Right now, honored guests representing various sectors of society, including community leaders and cultural figures. At the main event at midnight, which is about to happen within 5 minutes, the pavilion will be covered by 3 themed LED displays. The bell ringers will toll the bell 33 times in 3 sets of 11 strikes each. After the bell ringing ceremony, local band Crying Nut will perform the 3 songs as a celebratory live performance.
All right, Jenna, do stay with us. We'll get back to you after the bell ringing ceremony.
Of course, I'll be back in 10 minutes.
So not exactly 10 minutes. We are less than 5 minutes away from letting go of the year 2025 and greet the new year. And for tonight's New Year's countdown here in the Arirang studio, we've invited our culture correspondent, Park Konu. Good evening, Konu.
Great to be here, Dami.
Konu, isn't this our first time countdowning to the new year together, right?
Absolutely. And actually last year I was supposed to be at where Chuna is right now at the Boshingak Pavilion to celebrate the ceremony and also reporting live, of course. But unfortunately, due to an unfortunate incident that happened in Busan, the southern part of the country, due to the deadly plane crash, I was instead reporting live from the scene. And because of what happened on December 29th that year, the bell ringing ceremony was scaled down and held in a relatively quiet manner. So I'm really happy that this year we're able to share a much brighter moment and celebrate the ceremony live in the studio filled with joyful energy.
Right. For those of us who are joining us, we are covering a New Year's special here in the Arirang studio. And the footages we're watching at the moment is the Boshingak Pavilion in Central Seoul, where tens of thousands of people gather to let go of the year and greet a new year. And this year, at least 100,000 people have gathered together to welcome the year. Konu, it's also my first time actually counting down to the new year at work. It's warm and cozy here in the studio, but welcoming the new year at major spots like the pavilion spots is an incredible experience, just soaking in the hopeful spirit and good vibes, right?
Right, definitely. And as you can see on the screen, there are so many people. Also, this is Gwanghwamun that you're seeing on the screen right now. So there are also lots of people gathered at the site, and there has been a light show featuring on this traditional building that you're seeing right now.
Right, it's beautifully lit.
Right, so that's why many people are also gathered there and also at the Boshingak Pavilion, as you previously saw.
Right, now we are just about 2 minutes away from entering 2026.
Yes. I'm so nervous, Tommy, right now.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
I'm just excited to just let go of the old year and welcome a new year.
Yes, I feel both. Yes.
It's been a rough year, right?
For both of us.
Right. It has been a busy year. And we are back at the Boshingak Pavilion, where our Park Junan just connected with us. He's been out there, covering the New Year's special. Konu, now, it's the year of the red horse, right?
Right.
What are you most excited about? We are just about 1 minute away from the new year.
So just like a horse, I want to rush. I mean, not rush in a bad way, but I want to rush towards all the goals that I have for now and want to achieve all of them.
Right, definitely. It's when it comes to New Year, it's hard to, it's easy to reflect on, but also it's I would have to say. It's a great moment to establish new resolutions and let go of the old past and welcome a new year. We are now about 20 seconds away from entering 2026.
I've been waiting for this moment.
Definitely. Now we are seeing live footages at the Boshingak Pavilion, and we have entered the last 10 seconds of 2025.
4, 3,
2,
1.
1. Happy New Year! There goes the bell ringing ceremony. It will be rung 33 times, right?
Right, exactly 33 times. And as Junan will also mention, yes, they will be ringing that for 33 times. And yeah. And in the morning, so Tommy, after the sun rises, there are many places that you can enjoy the sunrise across the country. And do you want me to give you some recommendations?
You know, I do have to mention, watching the bell ringing ceremony is one of many traditions that people experience on New Year's Eve. But another New Year's tradition here in the country, like you mentioned, is watching the first sunrise of the year. So do give us some spots where we can experience and soak in the first light of the new year.
Of course, of course. So that's my job. And everyone, in the morning, the first place in Korea to see the sunrise will be Dokdo Island off the country's eastern coast at 7:26 a.m. And you can also catch the very first sunrise of the year at spots like Ganjeolgol in Ulsan and Bangojin, followed by inland regions starting around 7:31 a.m. And so for those planning to head out and watch the sunrise, it's best to get some sleep early, but only after watching our show.
Right, and it looks like people are enjoying some beautiful, bright fireworks at Dongdaemun Design Plaza to welcome 2026.
Yes, and at the DDP, that they have so many facades that you can see those media artwork that says 2026 right now, definitely.
Right. And it is now 2026, January 1st. We are just passing 12:02 a.m. here in South Korea. Let's connect back with our Park Junan at Bosinggak Pavilion. Junan, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Tommy.
So Junan, I'm sure it's a lot more exciting and thrilling out there than in the studio.
Right, Tommy, as you just mentioned, now it's 2026, and behind me, the bell is ringing majestically. The ceremony began at 11 p.m. with a series of performances to create a festive atmosphere, followed by an introduction of the bell ringers, honor guests representing the society and Seoul City, including community leaders and cultural figures. Despite and during the main event bell ringing, the pavilion is and will covered by 3 themed LED displays, and the bell ringers will toll the bell 33 times in 3 sets of 11 strikes each. After the bell ringers will toll the bell 33 times, the local band Crying Nut will perform the 3 songs as a celebratory live performance. Especially, the first song is related to the horse, which represents this year's strong red horse racing.
All right, Junan, thanks for the coverage tonight. That was our Park Junan live from Bosinggak Pavilion in Central Seoul. Junan, appreciate it.
Again, Happy New Year, Tommy.
And it's currently 12:03 a.m. on January 1st, 2026 here in South Korea. Happy New Year to all of our viewers here in the country and to those across the globe. And Konu, wishing you a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, Dami.
Konu, what's your New Year's resolution? I have to ask.
Well, I mean, I have a bunch in my mind, but recently I thought of reading more books this year because last year I planned to read about 10 books, but turned out to read only 1. And I actually read that last page on the last day of the year.
Oh, really? Oh, tonight?
Yes, tonight.
Oh, I mean last night. Technically last
yes,
night.
Exactly. So I felt great to, cross that down on my list. And also for this year, so also reading books, and also I want to exercise more, lifting some weights, and I actually think being healthy is my #1 priority for this year. So yeah, what about you, Dami?
Getting more views on our Arirang news channel.
Oh, wow.
Well, just kidding. But that would still be lovely. Like you said, good health and, happiness would be top priorities. And maybe winning the lottery.
Oh, that might be easy.
But of course, above all else, good health and happiness will be priorities for everyone, I'm sure, and we all cherish as we begin a new year, right?
Right, exactly. So I hope everything goes well with you, Tommy, and for all the viewers that are watching our show right now.
Thanks, Kanu.
Wonmisan Azalea Hill, capital city, Seoul.
In the scorching August heat
and splash the heat away.
Are scattered everywhere, and people are enjoying the Christmas vibe.
Gwanghwamun Square.
Everybody!
APEC 2025.
Today's mission,
scenes of the drama was filmed.
To become part of the K-pop scene.
It's difficult to miss out on K-pop.
Can you all share your signature poses? So speaking of K-pop teenagers, drama or short-form video makes you feel like you've stepped right into a scene from the show.
Korean temple food like this.
Exactly what people are looking for.
It actually tastes really good.
I'm running with the crew here at Seoul Yeouido Park
and bringing more winter sports success to Korea.
Do more than just watch.
The capital city of Silla,
Arirang News, Gyeongju. The performance Panda is about to begin.
Glimpse into their hope to be reunited.
What a year 2025 has been for entertainment and culture, a whirlwind of unforgettable moments and global sensations that kept us entertained, inspired, and talking around the world. And hopes are high it will be another year for many of us to enjoy and indulge in K content. I'm here in the Arirang studio in Seoul with our culture correspondent, Park Kwon-woo.
Okay, I'm also here.
Kwon-woo, now looking back at 2025, what kind of culture phenomenon can we look forward to in the new year in 2026?
Yes, so last year it was all about K-pop, I must say, following the global mega hit film K-pop Demon Hunters and also its official soundtrack, including the song Golden. And the momentum looks to see go through next year as well, continue next year, and that comes as some major artists are making comebacks. To dive in deeper, DNA, BTS, the group the world's been waiting for definitely, is set to release a new album this coming spring, their first in 4 years, followed by a big world tour. And also Blackpink's also dropping a first full-length album in 4 years
finally.
After, releasing the single Jump last July. And this comeback has gained even greater attention as it was originally planned for this year, but was postponed several months. And now, B to the I to the G, Big Bang marking the 20th anniversary of the group's debut is also preparing for a comeback, and anticipation is at its peak after leader G-Dragon revealed during his recent solo concert that the group will begin warming up in April. And that comes as members Taeyang and Daesung along with GD are scheduled to perform at California's major music festival Coachella later that month. And it's the Love Shot. EXO also made headlines recently with a comeback performance at the Melon Music Awards, unveiling a new song, Back It Up, which is expected to be included on the upcoming full-length album Reverse, set for release in mid-January. And in less than 5 days, Mr. Chu, A-Pink, will be making a comeback with a new album titled Relove after recently drawing attention with a short spoiler of the choreography and song. And I'm also looking forward to their newest song as well. And next year is especially meaning for A-Pink as it will be 15 years since debuting. And all of this comes as welcome news, signaling the return of many so-called second-generation and third-generation K-pop groups to the scene. While these groups are once again capturing significant attention, some concerns remain that they may not receive the same level of spotlight they enjoyed during their peak years. And one expert shared what he expects from these comebacks.
The fandom has become much stronger than before, so even when groups make a comeback after a long break, the role of their fans is clearly important. What matters most is whether artists show what their fans want to see as K-pop. More than other genres, is fan-centered. So, it's better not to be overly innovative or focus on agency profits.
He added that it would be especially meaningful for the second and third generation groups to take part in more collaborative projects similar to what Twice did in K-pop Demon Hunters. Citing the group as an example, he explained that its involvement in the movie helped the group reach what many describe as a second peak. And he also noted that working together with younger generation groups could also present another valuable opportunity for veteran artists to sustain and expand their musical careers.
So these big groups are certainly the comeback news that many fans have been waiting for. But at the same time, there have been concerns about a decline in album sales, right?
Right. So some recent analysis shows that album sales has declined compared to 2024, especially among young girl groups, raising concerns. But a pop culture critic says it's not a matter to worry too much about.
Album sales aren't the only metric to look at. The decline was partly due to major groups postponing their comebacks. Globally, overall consumption is shrinking. It's not just happening in Korea. At the same time, concert sales have reached record highs, and I believe this positive trend will continue into next year.
While third-generation groups like BTS and Blackpink are still leading K-pop, he said it's time for that leadership to be passed on. And he said he wishes to see more active participation from rookies and artists from small to mid-sized agencies. But he also said he's expecting this shift to happen as many groups are set to debut this year.
That's exciting. And Konu, last but not least, but 2026 is another meaningful year, not on the culture front, but also in terms of major sporting events, right?
Right. So many sport events are set to happen next year. In early February, the Winter Olympics will be held for about 2 weeks in Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo. And this will be the first time the Games are officially hosted across two cities. Around 3,500 athletes from more than 90 countries will compete in 16 sporting disciplines. Among them are South Korean athletes, including speed skater Lee Na-yeon, who I spoke to with earlier this year. And it's not just the Olympics. The FIFA World Cup will kick off on June 11th, hosted across 3 countries, the US, Canada, and even Mexico. South Korea will compete in Group A alongside teams including Mexico and South Africa.
All right, Kanu, thanks for filling us in tonight. Wishing you a happy new year again.
Same for you too, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
As we look ahead to 2026, many of this year's diplomatic challenges remain far from being resolved. With no movement in inter-Korean ties, a fragile understanding between Washington and Beijing, and a crumbling relationship between China and Japan, diplomacy in Northeast Asia could be pulled in several directions. For more, we invited our foreign affairs correspondents Kim Bo-kyung and Ushering. Welcome, Suyang.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for having me here.
And also, Happy New Year to you, Bo-kyung.
Thank you, Tammy, for having me. Happy New Year, too.
So, Bo-kyung, the Lee Jae-myung administration has been making efforts to ease tensions here on the Korean Peninsula last year in 2025. How effective these efforts been, and what's your outlook for inter-Korean relationships in the new year?
Right. So, like you said, the South Korean government has done a lot this year to resume talks with North Korea, halting anti-Pyongyang propaganda broadcasts and proposing inter-Korean military talks this year. However, despite such efforts, not much has been achieved, and experts predict that little will change in 2026. If we take a look at Kim Jong-un's message delivered in September before the Supreme People's Assembly, Kim struck a harsh tone towards Seoul, saying there would be no occasion to sit face-to-face and that Pyongyang will do nothing together with Seoul. From a broader geopolitical perspective, there are scant incentives for Pyongyang to engage in talks with Seoul, particularly as the negotiations to resolve the Ukrainian conflict are likely to remain stalled through 2026. This only makes Pyongyang believe that improving inter-Korean relations offers limited strategic or economic payoff. Furthermore, North Korea's relationship with Beijing has significantly strengthened, particularly after the North Korea-China summit in September 2025. This development likely provides Pyongyang with even less motivation to reach out to Seoul for dialogue. Kim did leave the door open for the talks with the U.S., however. In this context, the best possible scenario would be for Seoul to help start Pyongyang-Washington dialogue first, and then make the regime reconsider engaging in talks with Seoul.
Well, there's that for inter-Korean relations in the new year. Now, the big question is, Soo-young, I do have to turn to you, is whether U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un could meet again. What do we know based on what happened last year in 2025?
Right, well, in 2025, of course, there are big expectations that they could meet, and the biggest moment, really, the most likely timing seemed to be around the APEC summit in Gyeongju, here in South Korea, of course. But of course, President Trump attended that summit, and he signaled various times that he would like to meet Kim Jong-un. But in the end, it was Pyongyang that ultimately declined to engage. According to a National Intelligence Service briefing to the National Assembly Intelligence Committee in November, North Korea had made some preparatory moves earlier in the year, but chose not to proceed in the end. The NIS assessment now is quite important because it suggests that the door was not completely closed in 2025, but it was a political decision by Pyongyang, and really not a lack of US willingness. The intelligence agency also told lawmakers that in March 2026, after the annual ROK-US combined military exercises, this could mark the earliest realistic window for renewed leader-level diplomacy. And of course, as Bo-young mentioned, we might see a Trump-Xi meeting around April when President Trump visits Beijing. That said, though, there are some clear constraints. Throughout 2025, North Korea continued missile launches and weapons development, as we saw, reinforcing its demand to be treated as a nuclear-armed state, rather than showing any willingness for denuclearization. At the same time, Pyongyang has significantly deepened security and political ties with Russia, reducing, well, it's seeing less urgency to seek sanctions relief through talks with Washington. So going into the new year, a Trump-Kim meeting seems possible, but how likely, we just don't really know yet.
Right, we don't know. But what about when it comes to Seoul-Washington relations? I mean, what will be the biggest priorities in the new year?
Well, Tammy, I would say there are three core priorities going ahead for the South Korea-US alliance. First and foremost, South Korea seeking nuclear-powered submarines, in order to create greater deterrence against North Korea's growing undersea capabilities. And in late 2025, South Korea and the US agreed to begin working-level consultations with US officials, a delegation expected to visit in January, in order to review legal and technical constraints. Now, this could be one strong example of the so-called alliance modernization, which means updating how the two allies operate. The two sides are continuing to discuss how their responsibilities will be divided between Seoul and Washington, how extended deterrence will be applied in real-world scenarios, and how much flexibility US troops in Korea should have beyond the peninsula. Now, these points were raised repeatedly amid discussions in 2025 and pretty much remain unsettled. A third issue is wartime operational control, or OPCON as we call it. South Korea already controls its forces in peacetime, but in wartime, command shifts to a US-led structure. So the process of transferring OPCON follows a three-phase process, and the first phase was completed in 2019. The second, that process is going to be verified in 2026. This process known as the full operational capability. This is going to assess whether a Korean-led command can fully run combined wartime operations. Now, another point to watch is further trilateral coordination with the United States and Japan to hold regular three-way military exercises and information sharing amidst North Korea's continued threat to regional security.
I see. Now, let's talk about U.S.-China relations, which have been tense last year, marked by a tariff war. In the meantime, Seoul has improved ties with Beijing under the Lee Jae-myung administration. Bo-kyung, what can we expect for future relationships in the new year then?
Right. So the U.S. and China are expected to improve their ties, but in a very limited way. As U.S. midterm elections are coming up, Trump is going to continue with his strong containment policy toward China, but it is very unlikely that he is going to pursue a rapid economic decoupling. China, too, will respond firmly to U.S. pressure, but also reciprocate efforts to stabilize the relationship. In fact, Trump recently announced plans to visit China next April and has extended an invitation for Chinese President Xi Jinping to make a reciprocal visit, state visit that is, to the United States. So we would have to see what kinds of agendas Trump will bring to the negotiating table and seek to strike a deal with China. Now, meanwhile, Seoul and Beijing made significant progress in re-establishing relations this year, with President Lee Jae-myung holding a summit with Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping during Xi's state visit to South Korea to attend the APEC leaders meeting that was held in Gyeongju. Following the summit, the two countries' industry ministers held a follow-up meeting to bolster economic and trade cooperation, paving the way for a rebound in bilateral trade, which had stagnated since peaking in 2022. They also agreed to accelerate negotiations on the second phase of the Korea-China Free Trade Agreement, and China pledged to support smooth trade in core minerals, including rare earths, which are of particular interest to South Korea. With these agreements in place, the restoration of the Seoul-Beijing ties is expected to continue, and much of the deals are expected to materialize in January as President Lee is going to visit China at President Xi's invitation.
Right. Another development in Northeast Asia is the tensions between China and Japan. Do you see their relationship to get even worse in the new year?
Well, before I answer your question, we need to understand deeply of how the two countries have hit a new low. The tension has escalated in early November as Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said the use of military force against Taiwan could pose an existential threat to Japan.
Right.
China saw those remarks as highly provocative, interpreting them as a signal that Japan could engage in collective self-defense in a Taiwan contingency. This is not the first time the two countries have clashed. In fact, in 2012, a major dispute erupted over the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands. While relations gradually stabilized after more than 2 years, they never fully recovered. So many experts say the current standoff could result in a lower baseline for the relationship because of these two reasons. First of all, the Taiwan issue is too much of a core interest to China, far more sensitive than Senkaku Diaoyu Islands territorial disputes, making Beijing less willing to give up its hardline position. And at the same time, despite the row with China, Takaichi's approval ratings have remained extremely high, over 70%. Such strong support will reinforce her hardline stance and reduce political incentives for de-escalation. So as a result, it could be difficult to lower tensions, and it is unlikely that the Beijing-Tokyo relationship will return to how it was in previous days.
Indeed. Now, Soo-young, before we wrap up, what diplomatic event should we be watching closely in the new year? Do give us a mini preview.
Sure. So in 2025, we saw President Lee Jae-myung really bring Korea back to the global stage of multilateral diplomacy after martial law, of course. And in 2026, I think we're going to see a renewal of that. Korea will continue to be very active in terms of multilateral diplomacy, of course, beginning with perhaps the Group of Seven Nations meeting. Of course, South Korea isn't a G7 country, but it's becoming increasingly considered as a G7 level member due to its, role in global governance and various global agendas. And so it's likely to be invited to this year's Leaders Summit in France. And that said, Korea-France relations is likely to gain a lot of visibility as this year will mark 140 years of Korea-France relations. The two governments are working to arrange a reciprocal reciprocal visits between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Emmanuel Macron this year. So that's something we can look forward to. On that note, South Korea will also celebrate 30 years of joining the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So we expect to see some key events there. Another diplomatic event will be the first ever Korea Central Asia Summit with the leaders of the 5 so-called Silk Road countries likely traveling to Seoul to have a summit with President Lee. So that's going to be quite it's going to be quite an important event with a focus on energy security, infrastructure and people-to-people exchanges. So that's quite a lot to look forward to, and I'm sure, we'll be covering every minute of it.
Of course, do keep us posted. Soo-young, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks so much, Tammy.
And also, Bo-kyung, thanks for sharing the key diplomatic events to look for in 2026. I wish you a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Have you ever heard of the horse, the 7th animal of the 12 zodiac signs? To our ancestors, the horse was far more than livestock. It was a sacred messenger linking Earth with the heavens. The year 2026 is the year of the red horse, or Byung-oh year, carrying potent yang energy. That spirit is the very embodiment of unstoppable passion, kicking the ground and soaring toward the sky. In the Goguryeo tomb murals, the horses racing through the wind reveal a courage and vitality that still blaze across the centuries. The hunters and horses in the paintings transcend 1,000 years, conveying a dynamism so strong they seem ready to leap through the wall. Shinla's Chonmado, or the Heavenly Horse painting, powerfully and mystically expresses the spirit of the heavenly horse soaring through the clouds. Its stretched hooves and streaming tail hold the profound hope and will to leap forward. From the crude expressions of the earthen figurines, or toll, to the sleek figures engraved on the Royal Inspector's Token, or mape, the horse has always run alongside us. The horse, cherished by our ancestors, was a symbol of unceasing challenge and the hottest passion. Its appearance is steeped in fearless courage and the powerful momentum to move forward. Now, the red horse awakened across time delivers its powerful surge of energy to you, the energy of a bold leap into what comes next.
2026, the year of the red horse, symbolizes a vitality, a passion, a speed and change. A horse charging forward without hesitation. It's a year that reflects the energy and momentum of the younger generation. So what hopes and aspirations do young people carry as they step into the new year? Let us now turn to our Lee Soo-jin and the News Generation panel to hear what millennials and Gen Z have to say.
Happy New Year! I can already feel a fresh surge of energy for the year ahead right here in the studio. So as a program that reflects the trends and perspectives of the younger generation, we hope 2026 will be a year filled with happiness, growth, and exciting new challenges. And judging by the spirits we're seeing, millennials and Gen Zs are stepping into the new year full of vitality like the red horse. To talk about what 2026 holds for them, I'm excited and honored to be joined by two of our panelists, Ji-yeon and Won-bin. So Ji-yeon, a new year always brings a sense of fresh beginning. So what are you most looking forward to this year, and what kind of year do you hope 2026 will be?
Well, first of all, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yes. Well, 2026, as you mentioned earlier, it's the year of the red horse, according to the zodiac calendar. It symbolizes energy, bold action, creativity, and new beginnings in Korean culture. With the Olympic Winter Games Milan Cortina 2026, this year feels especially meaningful as I'm honored to host the opening ceremony and other Korean events in Milan. So let's ride into 2026 with strength, momentum, and a truly global spirit.
So it looks like you will have a very exciting year.
Looking forward to it.
What about you, Won-bin?
I'm looking forward for the sports games. Like Chun mentioned, we're starting with Milan Cortina Olympics, and then we have the United World Cup, and we also have the Asian Game in September as well. And moreover, maybe this is the more important one, in 2026 in Korea, we will have eight long weekends in 2026. In Korea, we call them 황금 연휴, which directly translates to the golden weekend in English.
So it looks like there's a lot of things to look forward to. And beyond individual stories and personal resolutions, we want to see what people are collectively hoping for as we head into 2026. So we asked on the Arirang News YouTube channel, what is your wish for the new year? So while personal resolutions may differ, it looks like many people share similar hopes as they head into 2026. So here's what the results showed. Nearly half of respondents, 49%, said their top wish for the new year is a peaceful daily life, reflecting a desire for stability and calm in uncertain times. Health and wealth followed closely, each chosen by 20%, highlighting continued concerns about well-being and financial security. Meanwhile, 11% said their wish for 2026 is simply happiness, reminding us that even amid broader concerns, personal fulfillment still matters. So what really stands out in the polls that viewers didn't choose something big or dramatic, they chose a peaceful daily life. And that seems to say a lot about how people are feeling right now. So Chien, why do you think so many young people, especially younger generations, are valuing calm, ordinary days more than ever?
A very good question. Well, many people are craving calm in their daily lives, as you mentioned. This is known as aboha. Aboha trend, it shows a move away from constant pressure. For many, even an ordinary day may feels like a small luxury. So in a noisy world, calm stands out the most.
So the idea of finding joy in ordinary days really resonates with me too, especially because we all live in such a fast-paced and demanding society. But this doesn't seem to be a trend just here in Korea. So Wonbin, do you think what we're seeing is also connected to what's happening globally? So why does the desire for everyday normality feel stronger now across the world?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just in Korea. It's a global phenomenon, and that's probably because there are a lot of global issues, conflicts, and accidents in 2025. And with all the noise going on in the background, and for some people directly in their lives, people are now valuing more average, normal, just peaceful day more than before.
Right, and that really captures the mood of the moment. When uncertainty becomes part of everyday life, even ordinary, uneventful days start to feel meaningful. It helps explain why so many people are prioritizing stability and peace over anything else. And beyond those personal reflections, we also wanted to hear what our viewers are hoping for Korea as we head into 2026. So we asked our viewers on the Arirang News YouTube channel, what are your hopes for Korea in the new year? So here's what the results show. The responses show that economic stability tops the list, with 43% saying it is their biggest hope for Korea in 2026. This was followed by desire for a trustworthy government, chosen by 25%, and social stability at 23%, highlighting concerns about cohesion. Meanwhile, 9% of respondents say they hope to see the further global expansion of Hallyu, reflecting continued pride in Korea's cultural influence abroad. So what stands out here is that economic stability remains the top priority, suggesting that everyday financial concerns are front and center for many people. And these results seem to reflect a desire for stability, both economically and socially. So it's a picture that reflects some very real challenges Korean society has been facing in recent years. So let me ask you, Chien, do these hopes resonate with you? When you think about Korean society in 2026, what changes or improvements do you personally hope to see?
Well, I totally agree what you said, especially the desire for economic stability, stable economy. You know, since the pandemic, rising costs have made life harder for us, for many young people as well. And I truly hope this year brings more stability and ease for the younger generation. So fingers crossed for a lighter year.
I think you cover some key points. Do you have anything to add, Wonbin?
Yeah, so in terms of like society, a peaceful society starts with not having any conflicts. In 2025, we were surrounded with different problems and conflicts, such as political problems, generation gaps, and gender conflicts. So in the new years in 2026, I hope that people can find a way to understand each other and find the middle ground to form a peaceful society.
I think that was very powerfully and well put. Peace doesn't begin with big systems, both being understanding and kind to both ourselves and others. So thank you both for sharing the hopes and aspirations that young people have for 2026. And once again, Happy New Year.
제가 미국에서 왔는데 내년에 제가 미국 돌아가서도 제 일도 그렇고 한국에 남아있는 가족들이 가장 안전하고 행복하게 1년을 지내고 또 내년에 다시 또 만나뵐 때 다들 발전된 모습으로 만나볼 수 있었으면 좋겠습니다.
새해는 말에 띄니까
모든 국민이 말과 함께 힘차게 넓게 건강하게 가족 모두가 행복한 병원년이 되기를 바랍니다.
I think continuing all the goals that I didn't do this year, like I do cheerleading and I have my own teams and I wanted to open a own gym. That's my biggest goal.
저는 강아지들을 좋아해가지고 강아지들을 도울 수 있는 강아지 보호소, 유기견 보호소를 차리는 게 제 소망입니다.
지금 저희 어머니랑 같이 셋이서 살고 있는데요. 연세도 있고 해서 마지막으로 그 중국 샤먼 해외여행을 어머니 모시고 마지막으로 해외여행 가는 거는 마지막으로 가는 걸 그걸 계획하고 있고요.
그러니까 이제 대학교 졸업을 하고 이제 열심히 준비를 해서 대학원 갈 준비를 하고 있는데 2026년에는 꼭 붙었으면 좋겠습니다.
As we close out an amazing year and welcome a new one, Arirang TV would like to send its heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for your incredible support. May the new year bring you all the joy, health, success, and peace you deserve. Again, Happy New Year. Goodbye.